"Grace, something's wrong. He's not breathing." A 1-year-old baby collapses in the middle of a glamorous New York gala, turning celebration into chaos. His father panics, the guests freeze, but the stepmother holding him behaves far too calmly. When a broken acrylic nail and a half-dissolved pill fall near the child's mouth, one terrifying truth becomes clear. This wasn't an accident. Who planned this? Why did they target an innocent child? And how did a maid become the only person brave enough to expose the villain? Before we begin, tell me one thing. Where are you watching this video right now? And what time is it in your city? Now take a deep breath, adjust your volume, to uncover the dark secret behind this perfect family. Viewers must watch the story till the end. Inside the Anderson mansion, a glass and marble palace towering over Manhattan's Upper East Side, the prestigious charity gala came to a sudden, horrifying stop. Dozens of New York's most powerful executives froze mid-conversation, their champagne flutes suspended in the air, eyes widening as the music died. Because the scene before them wasn't just shocking. It was nightmare material. Vanessa Reed, dazzling in a silver couture gown still glowing under the chandelier, stood at the center of the ballroom holding a small, limp body in her arms. It looked like a doll at first glance. Light, floppy, motionless. But the purple-blue tint crawling across the tiny cheeks revealed the truth instantly. It was Leo Anderson, the 1-year-old heir of the Anderson tech empire. And he wasn't breathing. His skin was turning a deep ashen gray. His lips were darkening toward a terrifying shade no living baby should ever carry. His chest didn't rise. His fingers dangled lifelessly against Vanessa's gown. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped their glass. Someone else covered their mouth. A billionaire banker staggered backward. But no one moved to help. And then Robert Anderson, CEO, billionaire, widower, father, came running. He shoved through guests, his face drained of every hint of authority he normally carried. His breathing was erratic, and his trembling hands hovered uselessly over his son's body. Leo, oh God! Somebody help him!" Robert cried, voice cracking under the weight of panic and grief. He looked nothing like the man whose face graced Forbes magazine. Tonight, he was just a father losing the last piece of his world. But while he trembled, Vanessa only posed. Her screams were dramatic, her tears perfectly placed, her voice high-pitched in theatrical hysteria. Yet her eyes, sharp, cold, betrayed a truth only a few could see. She wasn't horrified. She was annoyed. She held the dying toddler at arm's length, as though he might stain her expensive imported silk. Long acrylic nails, glittering razor-sharp, curled stiffly away from his body, offering neither protection nor comfort. I don't know what happened," she wailed, fake confusion coating every syllable. "He just stopped. He just went limp." But beneath her perfectly sculpted brows lived a calculation. Cold, deadly one. The guests stared, petrified. None dared touch the heir of a man worth billions. None wanted to be accused of harming him. And so, as Leo's life slipped away, the elite of New York stood frozen in their designer shoes, too scared to act. And then, through the side doorway, from the service hallway the wealthy never bothered to look at, burst Grace Miller, 28 years old, African, maid of the Anderson mansion for 7 long, loyal years. Invisible to the rich, but not tonight. Grace sprinted across the marble floor, her worn work shoes squeaking sharply with every step. Her eyes weren't filled with fear. They were filled with raw, maternal urgency. She didn't see a billionaire's heir. She saw a baby she had fed, bathed, soothed, and secretly loved. "Give him to me," Grace begged, extending her arms. But Vanessa reacted like a cornered predator. "No!" she shrieked, jerking the baby away. "Don't touch him with your filthy hands." Her shove hit Grace square in the chest, hard enough to send the older woman stumbling backward. Gasps shot across the room. Robert stared in disbelief, too shocked to speak, too panicked to move. Leo's color continued darkening. His throat rattled weakly, like his body wanted to cough, but couldn't. His airway was blocked. He was dying silently. Seconds left, maybe less. The mansion's cold air conditioning hummed loudly, bringing the temperature down just enough to make the entire scene feel like a morgue. Perfumes, champagne, sweat, and panic mixed into a nauseating haze. Vanessa gripped the suffocating toddler the way one holds a ruined accessory, searching desperately for someone, anyone, to relieve her of the responsibility. Her eyes darted around the room, not for help, but for an escape, for someone to take the problem out of her hands. But no one stepped forward. Grace slowly pushed herself up from the marble, her eyes locked on Leo. His blue skin, his unmoving chest, his head lolling as though life had already slipped away. A decision hardened in her. Promise formed. A fire lit. She would not let this baby die. Not while she was standing. Not while she still had breath in her body. But before she could act again, before she could force her way through the crowd and tear the child out of Vanessa's hands, the story shifted. Because to understand how Leo Anderson, the wealthiest toddler in New York City, ended up dying in the arms of a woman who wanted him gone, we have to go back. Back to 24 hours earlier. Back to the morning everything began to unravel. 24 hours earlier, sunlight spilled through the panoramic windows of the Anderson mansion, illuminating a world designed for perfection. Everything was white marble, chrome, and glass, the kind of sterile beauty that photographed well but felt nothing like a home. Robert Anderson adjusted his cufflinks in the foyer mirror. He looked sharp in his tailored navy suit, but underneath the polished exterior lived a man who was fractured, rebuilding himself piece by broken piece. Losing his wife a year earlier had carved a wound that never fully closed. And now, with Vanessa by his side, he believed, desperately, that he had found the missing piece that would bring stability back to his family. Vanessa descended the staircase like a model stepping onto a runway. Her silk robe shimmered, her makeup already flawless, though it wasn't even 10 a.m. "Big day tomorrow," she said with a rehearsed smile as she kissed Robert lightly on the cheek. "You've handled everything perfectly," Robert replied, relief softening his voice. "And thank you again for loving Leo the way you do. I don't know what I'd do without you." Grace, passing quietly through the hallway with a basket of fresh linens, stiffened at his words. Loving Leo? If only Robert knew the truth. Vanessa's smile twitched, brief, stiff, almost disgusted, but she quickly masked it with a sweet laugh. "Of course, darling. He means the world to me." She said it like a line she'd memorized for a performance. Moments later, Robert kissed her goodbye and left for his downtown Manhattan office. The massive front doors closed with a soft, echoing thud. And just like that, Vanessa's entire demeanor changed. Her shoulders relaxed. Her expression dropped from gentle warmth to cold annoyance. She wiped away Robert's kiss with the back of her hand. "Finally," she muttered, "I can breathe." Leo's cry erupted from the nursery upstairs. Sharp, hungry, desperate. Vanessa rolled her eyes with the dramatics of someone being forced to deal with the world's most exhausting inconvenience. "Jesus, that kid," she hissed. But the crying didn't stop. Grace, downstairs folding hand towels, recognized the sound. Babies had many types of cries, and she could decode each one the way a musician deciphers notes. This wasn't a fussy cry. This wasn't a sleepy cry. This was hunger. Real, urgent hunger. Grace moved toward the stairs instinctively, but halfway up, Vanessa's heels clicked sharply behind her. "Don't." The word was a blade. Grace froze. Vanessa brushed past her, yanking the nursery door open. Inside, baby Leo lay in his sleek designer crib, screaming his tiny lungs out. His cheeks were red, his fists clenched. His stomach ached with emptiness. Vanessa didn't lift him. didn't soothe him, didn't even look at him. Instead, she grabbed her phone, turned the camera to selfie mode, and forced her voice into a sugary tone. "Ah, look at my little angel," she cooed, falsely, as she gently stroked his head for the camera. Being a new mom is so exhausting, but it's worth it. In the background, Leo's cries pierced through the act like bullets. But the moment the recording ended, her hand jerked back as if she'd touched fire. Her face twisted with disgust. Ugh, enough already. She grabbed the remote and turned up the TV volume in the room until pop music blasted through the walls. The crying kept going, barely audible under the pounding beat. Grace stood in the doorway, heartbreaking. "Ma'am, he's hungry. It's been hours," she said softly. Vanessa whirled around. Her eyes sharpened. "I didn't ask you," she spat. "The baby needs to learn discipline. If I pick him up every time he cries, he'll become spoiled." "He's a baby," Grace whispered. "He needs. What he needs," Vanessa cut in, stepping closer, "is for you to stay in your place." Grace swallowed hard and lowered her eyes, not because she lacked courage, but because she feared what Vanessa would do to Leo if challenged. Later, when the house quieted, Grace returned to the kitchen and began preparing a bottle, warm, perfect temperature, exactly the way Leo liked it. She couldn't let him suffer. But as she stepped into the hallway, Vanessa appeared, blocking her path like a guard dog. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm feeding him," Grace said, her voice steady, though she felt her pulse pounding in her neck. "He's been crying for hours." Vanessa snatched the warm bottle from her hands so violently that milk sloshed over the rim. "My child," Vanessa hissed, "is on a schedule. And you—" Her gaze scanned Grace from head to toe with icy disdain. "Don't get to decide anything. And don't go near him again today. I won't have your greasy, cheap perfume clinging to him." Grace didn't wear perfume. She couldn't afford it. But she said nothing. Hours passed. Leo's cries grew weaker, his tiny voice fading from exhaustion. And that's when Vanessa made the decision that would turn the following night into a near homicide. She marched to her vanity table, opened a crystal drawer, and pulled out a small amber bottle. Sleeping drops. Not for children. Not even safe for teens. Potent adult sedative. She poured a dangerously large amount into a bottle of milk, swirled it, then headed toward the nursery. "Time to rest, little nuisance," she whispered. Grace watched from a crack in the door, horror flooding her veins. Vanessa forced the bottle into Leo's mouth. He tried to resist, weakly, his body flinching at the bitter taste. But hunger and the strength of Vanessa's grip forced him to swallow. Within minutes, his eyelids drooped, his limbs softened, his cry fell silent, too silent. His breathing slowed to an unnatural, frightening rhythm. Vanessa smirked. Perfect. When she left the room, Grace slipped inside, trembling. She picked the baby up, heart cracking when she felt how limp he was. This wasn't sleep. This was drug-induced unconsciousness. "Oh, baby, what did she do to you?" Grace whispered, voice shaking. She held him to her chest, giving him warmth, humming softly, willing him to stay alive. But before she could fully comfort him, Vanessa's footsteps thundered upstairs again. Grace returned him to the crib instantly, hiding the love in her arms just in time. Vanessa's voice echoed down the hall. "Tonight's gala better be perfect." Grace clutched her apron. She knew tomorrow would bring danger, but she had no idea how close death would come. By the following afternoon, the Anderson mansion had transformed into a spectacle of wealth. Event designers rushed through the halls, adjusting floral installations, string lights, and champagne towers. A red carpet stretched across the grand entryway. Luxury vehicles lined the street. It was the kind of night where Manhattan's richest came not just to donate, but to be seen donating. Vanessa lived for nights like these. She stood before a floor-length mirror in her suite, makeup flawless, diamond necklace sparkling, hair in perfect Hollywood waves. She practiced her smile, warm, maternal, deceptive. "Tonight is my night," she murmured to herself. Then she turned toward the crib, where Leo lay limp in a miniature tuxedo. His head slumped unnaturally to the side. His eyelids drooped halfway. His skin looked too pale under the nursery lighting. But Vanessa didn't see a child. She saw an accessory. "Let's go," she said sharply. She scooped him up with a cold grip, adjusting him like a handbag. His body sagged against her chest, too heavy, too motionless. "Ugh, pull it together," she muttered, giving him a small shake to reposition him. Leo didn't react. Downstairs, Robert stood waiting at the base of the grand staircase, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his fiancée and his son. He smiled, genuine, aching, hopeful. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing Vanessa's cheek. "And Leo, he looks adorable." Grace stood discreetly behind a column, watching with a tightening chest. She could tell instantly, just from the way Leo's hands hung, that something was very wrong. She wanted to scream, wanted to yank him out of Vanessa's arms, wanted to tell Robert everything. But she couldn't, not yet. Not in front of 100 guests. Not without proof. Not without a way to stop Vanessa from spinning a lie. So she waited, watched, prayed. The gala began with a flood of guests. CEOs, politicians, celebrities. Everyone wanted to shake Robert's hand and gush over Vanessa's motherly glow. "Oh, he's such a calm baby," one socialite praised. "He never cries, does he?" Another chimed. Vanessa smiled sweetly. "He's an angel. Never gives me trouble." Grace clenched her jaw. Leo wasn't calm, he was sedated. As Vanessa floated from group to group, Leo's head bobbed dangerously, his neck muscles too weak to hold it up. She used her manicured hand to keep him upright, pinching his side whenever he leaned too far. "Don't embarrass me," she hissed under her breath. The ballroom glowed under golden lighting. Champagne bubbled, music swelled, laughter rang, and Grace watched every second. Near the main bar, she overheard a conversation that froze her blood. An older banker asked Vanessa, "So what school are you planning for little Leo in a few years?" Vanessa's smile sharpened. She had been waiting to reveal this. "Oh, I've already picked one," she said proudly. "A boarding academy in Switzerland. They take children as young as 6 months." Grace nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. Switzerland? She wanted to send Leo overseas? Robert, half listening, nodded absently. "Yes. It's supposed to be very advanced." He had fallen for Vanessa's narrative of elite education. He had no idea she wanted the boy gone. Permanently. Grace felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. Tonight wasn't just dangerous. Tonight was the beginning of something far worse if she didn't act. Hours passed. The crowd grew louder. Vanessa basked in attention, holding Leo higher whenever cameras pointed her way. The baby's head lolled forward, causing his airway to compress further. Still no one noticed, except Grace. She watched his breathing, shallow, erratic, fading. She watched his color, pale with a bluish tint beginning at the lips. She watched his tiny chest barely rising. Something was happening, something catastrophic. Near the end of cocktail hour, Leo's body jerked slightly, a reflexive attempt to cough. He choked on his saliva, trying to clear his throat, but his muscles were too relaxed from the sedative. Then Grace saw it, a faint metallic glimmer near his mouth. One of Vanessa's long acrylic nails was missing from her right hand and lodged, God help him, somewhere inside Leo's throat. Grace covered her gasp with her hand. He wasn't just drugged. He was choking. And Vanessa, too consumed with posing for photos, didn't notice her manicure-related disaster. The baby's breaths became weaker, shorter, more desperate. Grace's heart pounded. She rushed forward, but a security guard stepped into her path. "Staff stays in the serving area," he said firmly. "Please, he's not well," Grace whispered. "Look at him." But the guard didn't look, didn't care. This was a world where staff blended into walls. Grace backed away, helpless but not defeated. Across the room, Robert tapped his champagne glass. "Everyone," he announced with a bright smile. "A toast to family, second chances, and the future." The guests lifted their glasses. Vanessa lifted Leo higher, placing him under the spotlight. And Grace saw it happen. Leo's body went completely still. His lips turned purple. His eyes rolled back. His chest stopped rising. Grace's scream caught in her throat. The baby's neck went slack. His arm dropped. His face lost all remaining color. He wasn't breathing. He was dying. Right there, in front of 100 people too distracted to see it. And as Robert finished the word, future, Leo's tiny body convulsed once, and then went limp. A crystal glass slipped from Robert's hand and shattered against the marble. The sound echoed through the mansion like a shot. Just like at the beginning, just like fate circling back. The music halted. Conversations stopped. Every guest turned. Vanessa stared at the lifeless baby in her arms, stunned. Robert collapsed to his knees. Grace dropped her tray, silverware clattering loudly. The world froze, and death, silent, cold, merciless, hovered over the child who had endured far more than any baby ever should. Grace knew this was her moment, her chance, her duty. If she didn't act now, no one would, and Leo Anderson would die. Grace didn't hesitate, while the entire ballroom stood frozen. Shocked, horrified, useless. She pushed through the crowd, her heart racing with a terror she had never felt before. Robert was on the floor, cradling his lifeless son against his chest, sobbing Leo's name over and over, as if repeating it would force breath back into the tiny body. "Come on, buddy. Breathe. Please breathe." But no air entered Leo's lungs. His airway was blocked. His muscles were too sedated to react. His skin was an ominous bluish gray. Vanessa stood above them, one manicured hand clasped over her mouth. Not in grief, but in calculating panic. She could feel her perfect world slipping between her fingers. "No, no, Robert. Stop," she cried dramatically, grabbing his arm. "It's too late. He's gone. Don't torture him like this." Her words were not of comfort. They were of self-preservation. If Leo died right here, right now, there would be no investigation, no questions, no toxicology reports, and no blame. But if he lived, she would face prison, lifetime prison. While Vanessa continued her performative despair, Grace reached Robert's side. "Let me take him," she said, her voice trembling yet firm. "Mr. Anderson, please. Let me try." Robert looked up into Grace's eyes. He saw something he hadn't seen in himself for hours. Certainty, knowledge, hope. He handed Leo into her arms without a word. The room murmured in disbelief. A maid taking charge? In front of CEOs, politicians, and elite donors? Vanessa lunged forward, screaming, "Get her away from him. She's going to make it worse." But Grace ignored her. She had seconds, maybe less. She placed Leo face down along her forearm, his head angled downward. Her other hand curved firmly across his back. This was not a gentle maneuver. This was not delicate. This was life or death. Grace raised her palm and delivered the first sharp strike right between Leo's shoulder blades. A collective gasp ricocheted across the room. Nothing came out. She hit again, harder this time. Still nothing. Guests began shouting, "Oh my God! She's hurting him. Someone get security." Vanessa shrieked, "Stop her. That woman is insane." But Robert lifted his hand, blocking any interference. "Let her work." Grace whispered a prayer under her breath. tears mixing with sweat on her cheeks. "Come on, baby, please." She pulled her arm back and struck a third time, the hardest one yet. For a split second, the world held its breath. Then, a wet, choking sound ripped from Leo's throat. A shiny object shot from his mouth, clinking across the marble floor. A long acrylic nail. Vanessa's acrylic nail. Gasps erupted everywhere. A senator's wife screamed. A businessman stumbled backward. Grace quickly turned Leo upright, sweeping fluids from his mouth. His chest heaved once, shallow, ragged. Then again, a louder breath. And then, a wail. A sharp, raw, powerful cry that filled every corner of the enormous ballroom. Leo was alive. Alive. The sound that once irritated Vanessa now hit Robert like a miracle. He collapsed, crying openly as he reached for his son. "My boy! My sweet boy!" Grace placed the baby gently into Robert's arms, sobbing with relief. Paramedics burst into the room seconds later, but the hardest work had already been done by a woman with calloused hands and a mother's heart. But the room wasn't finished reacting, because lying in a puddle of spit beside the acrylic nail was something even more damning. Partially dissolved white pill, too large for a child, too strong for any baby to ingest without collapsing. The evidence glistened under the chandelier. Everyone stared at Vanessa. Her trembling hand instinctively moved behind her back. But it was too late. Her right index finger was missing its acrylic nail. The entire room made the connection at the same time. Is that her nail? Did she drug the baby? Did she try to kill him? Call the police right now. Vanessa's face drained of color, her mascara trembling at the edges. "No, no, it's not what it looks like," she screamed, backing away. I dropped a pill earlier. I was sick. The baby must have found it on the floor." A lie. Desperate. Illogical. No one believed her. Not after seeing Leo's limp body. Not after hearing her dismiss his cries. Not after witnessing Grace save a life she had nearly destroyed. Robert rose slowly, holding Leo tightly against his chest. He looked at Vanessa with a rage so cold it froze the air between them. "You gave my son something," he said quietly. "Didn't you?" "Robert, please," Vanessa begged. "You know I love him." "And oh," he exploded, pointing right at her. "You loved the cameras. You loved the power. But you never loved this child." He glanced at the pill on the floor, the nail, the baby who could have died. Then back at Vanessa, the woman he almost married. "You tried to kill him." Vanessa's mask crumbled. "No, no, Robert, I swear." He turned to security, voice like thunder. "Get her out of my house." Gasps swept through the crowd. 2 guards stepped forward. "No, Robert, don't do this." Vanessa shrieked, struggling as they seized her arms. "This dress is Valentino. The paparazzi are outside. You can't drag me like this. I made you look good." "You almost killed my son," Robert said. "Take her out." She was pulled across the marble, kicking, sobbing, cursing, her perfect image shattering in front of New York's elite. Just before being thrown out the front door, Robert added, "And tomorrow, my attorneys will serve you with charges for attempted homicide and child abuse. Enjoy the rest of your life in a cell." The doors slammed shut. Silence filled the ballroom. Not fear, not tension, relief. Grace sank to her knees. Robert knelt beside her, holding Leo close. He looked at Grace with raw gratitude and guilt. "You saved him," he whispered. She shook her head. "I just did what any mother would." And that was when Robert truly broke. "You are," he said. "You are his mother. You always have been." The mansion, once cold and cruel, felt different in that moment, because love had finally stepped into the light. 5 years passed. 5 years since the night a baby fought for his life in a Manhattan ballroom. 5 years since Grace Miller struck 3 life-saving blows that changed the course of an entire family. 5 years since Vanessa Reed, once adored, envied, worshipped, was handcuffed on her way into a courtroom and sentenced for attempted homicide and child endangerment. Her glamorous future dissolved in a concrete cell. And now the Anderson mansion was unrecognizable. The cold, museum-like palace of glass and marble had softened into a warm, thriving home. The meticulously polished floors now held toy cars and scattered art supplies. The manicured lawn, a once sterile landscape, had transformed into a playground. Swings, chalk drawings, a basketball hoop, and a golden retriever bounding joyfully across the grass. Gone was the suffocating silence. In its place lived laughter. Bright, genuine, liberating laughter. In the center of the yard ran 5-year-old Leo Anderson, healthy, rosy-cheeked, full of boundless energy. His father chased him, panting heavily but grinning like a man who finally understood what mattered in life. "Leo, slow down. Your old man can't keep up," Robert shouted, half laughing, half gasping for breath. Leo giggled and kicked a soccer ball toward the far end of the yard. "Come on, Dad. You're too slow." Robert pretended to collapse in dramatic defeat. "You're too fast. They should put you in the Olympics." Leo sprinted back to him, tackling him in a clumsy hug. Robert lifted him into the air, spinning him until the boy squealed with pure joy. There was no sign, none, of the frail, drugged, near-dying child from years ago. Leo was whole, alive, safe, thanks to Grace. Up on the terrace, Grace stood leaning against the railing, sipping warm tea from a floral mug. Not in a maid's uniform. Those days were long gone, but in soft, colorful clothing that reflected her new role in the household. She wasn't the help anymore. She was family, the true heart of the home. Her hair, now streaked gracefully with silver, shimmered in the afternoon sun. A gentle smile formed on her lips as she watched Leo race across the lawn. She had raised him, loved him, protected him, not because she was paid to, but because she couldn't do anything else. Leo spotted her and immediately abandoned the game. "Grace!" he shouted, running full speed toward the terrace. Robert stepped aside, letting the child sprint up the stairs. Leo launched himself into Grace's arms. The impact nearly made her spill her tea, but she didn't mind one bit. She hugged him tightly, pressing a kiss to the top of his curly head. "My goodness!" Grace laughed. "You're getting too big for me to catch." "No, I'm not. You're the strongest ever," Leo insisted, squeezing her neck. Grace's eyes softened. "You keep saying that, and I'm going to start believing it." Robert joined them on the terrace moments later, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Grace," he said. "He ran me into the ground again. I think he's trying to kill me." "He's just full of life," she replied, smiling knowingly. "Exactly how he should be." The three of them stood together, looking out over the yard. The weight of 5 years of healing settled gently around them. After a long moment, Robert broke the silence. "You know," he said quietly, "I still think about that night." Grace's expression turned soft but serious. "So do I," she admitted. Robert nodded. "I'll never forgive myself for not seeing what was happening. I let someone dangerous into our lives. But you saved us." Grace placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good father, Robert. You always were. You just needed time to see the truth." He swallowed hard, emotion rising. "And you, Grace, I would not have a son without you. You are the reason he's alive. You're part of this family for as long as you want to be." Grace wiped a tear before it could fall. "I already am, Robert." Below them, Leo chased the dog across the grass again, laughing so loudly it echoed off the mansion walls. The sound brought peace. A peace Robert had once believed he'd never feel again. That peace had taken a long road to reach this home. Vanessa had been convicted swiftly and decisively. The nail, the pill, eyewitness testimonies, it was undeniable. Her public image collapsed. Her modeling contracts were canceled. Her social media following evaporated. In court, she looked nothing like the glamorous woman who once dazzled Manhattan. Prison aged her. Isolation broke her. Justice buried her. Her name was now a cautionary tale whispered among the very social circles she once commanded. But Robert didn't dwell on her anymore. His focus was here, on the life he rebuilt from the ashes. "Grace," Leo called suddenly from the yard. "Come play with us." Grace laughed. "You two go ahead. I'll join you in a minute." "You promise?" Leo asked. "With all my heart." He nodded and ran back to the lawn. Robert turned to her again. "He loves you more than anyone." Grace exhaled slowly, a warmth spreading in her chest. "And I love him more than he'll ever know." She wasn't related to him by blood. She didn't share his last name. But she had done what mothers do: held him, fed him, soothed him, saved him. And in return, he had given her something she didn't know she was missing: family. Real family. Not defined by DNA, but by devotion. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow across the yard. Robert stepped forward and wrapped an arm around Grace's shoulder. She leaned into the embrace comfortably, a gesture that would have been unthinkable years ago. They were no longer employer and maid. They were partners in raising a child, survivors of the same tragedy, two hearts bound by gratitude and love. Together, they watched Leo run free, alive, vibrant, endlessly joyful. 5 years ago, he was moments away from death. Now, he was the center of a world built on compassion, truth, and second chances. Grace whispered a small prayer under her breath. Prayer of thanks. A prayer of protection. A prayer for the boy she had pulled back from the edge of darkness. Leo glanced up toward the terrace again, waving wildly. "Grace! Dad! Look at me!" he shouted. They both waved back. The mansion, once cold as ice, now pulsed with warmth, a testament to what love, courage, and truth can build. Finally, it was a home, and the child who had survived betrayal now grew surrounded by people who would defend him fiercely for the rest of their lives. The Anderson family was whole, and Grace Miller, the woman who had once been invisible, had become its heart.